So tonight, we're going to talk about the Rosary, or I'm going to talk about the Rosary. All right, so to start off, how many of you have heard about Bishop Oliver Dome? Anybody? No way. This is Franciscan University, bro. You guys don't know about this guy? Okay, I'm surprised. I think you're going to know him. You just probably don't know the name. Okay, so in December of 2014, so just a couple years ago, in Nigeria. Now, is that ringing a bell, maybe? Some? Okay, all right. So in Nigeria, in his area, it's been infiltrated by Boko Haram, radical Muslim terrorists who do horrible things to people. They put them in cages, they burn them alive, they kidnap little girls, and they do horrible things with those little girls, and then they sell them to others so that they can do the horrible things. It's horrible, horrible, demonic organization. Well, there was a bishop in that area where they're doing all this stuff. He was at prayer, this bishop, Bishop Oliver Dome, before the Blessed Sacrament, and he was praying his rosary. And all of a sudden, and he gives testimony to this. When you go back to your dorm tonight, you can do a Google and you'll find the videos of him talking about what I'm about to tell you. He's at prayer, praying his rosary before the Blessed Sacrament, and Jesus appears to him. Now, this is a bishop telling the story. He's not lying to us. Guess what Jesus had in his hands? Our Jesus. The Jesus that you and I receive in Holy Communion, that we love, that we've given our lives to. Guess what he had in his hands? A sword. A sword. A sword of steel. That's my Jesus. Now, I'm not saying my Jesus is Conan or Braveheart or, but it was a sword. Our Jesus came with a sword to his bishop in an area that's plagued by radical Islamic terrorists. And he held out the sword to his bishop in a gesture of take it. He didn't say anything to him, but he held it out. And so the bishop went to take the sword. And as soon as he touched the sword, it was mystically transformed into a rosary. And Jesus then spoke to his bishop and said 3 times, Boko Haram is gone. Boko Haram is gone. Boko Haram is gone. After that, the bishop went and told his priest what happened, and he started rosary crusades. That was 2 years ago. Just 2.5 weeks ago, that bishop went on air in England and said that in his area in Nigeria, Boko Haram is almost all but vanquished because of this rosary weapon, this sword. In other areas of Nigeria, they're still there, Boko Haram, where they don't have the rosary crusades. Heaven spoke to him and to us. And that's what I want to go through tonight is, you see this in my hands, and it doesn't look like anything. It just looks like a wooden rosary. It's a really cool rosary, I have to admit. But it doesn't look intimidating. What damage could you do with this thing? Every now and then these things break in my pocket. They get snagged, and I got to get a new one. But what you can't see is what I'm holding in my hand right now. But God can see, and the angels can see, both the holy ones and the fallen ones. What they can see that I have in my hand right now is a sword of unbelievable power. You can't see it, but they can. It's here. Demons fear this thing. Nobody slays a dragon without a sword. That's what this is. And as you've heard in your theology classes, I'm sure, and from the preaching here, the whole bookends of human history are about what? From Genesis to Revelation. What's in that book? A woman doing battle against a serpent dragon, Lucifer, Satan, the devil, and is her divine offspring, her firstborn son, who conquers him, and her other offspring, you and me. God set this up this way. This is the bookends of human history, of everything. He knew that this woman that he made was going to be the one to crush Satan's face, and that she was going to be the one who would bring into the world the one who would give to us the saving sacred mysteries to slay the dragon. So, he was going to create a weapon, a special weapon. He could have done it at the beginning of time right away, but he chose to work throughout time and in his workshop. He was almost like acting like a blacksmith in a certain sense. forging a weapon that would be a Marian weapon for that chosen woman, that she could give it to her children and they could use it to cut off the heads of the wicked Hydra, seven-headed Hydra. You better have a very powerful sword if you're going to come up against a beast like that. So God works slowly, letting his church cooperate with him in this workshop of the Catholic Church. And there were things that would be called antecedents of the weapon. Because, you know, when you read a lot of books about the Rosary, a lot of the people are well-intentioned, but they don't do their research well. And they start regurgitating things that have been said by what I would call modernists, in the last 100 years especially, saying that the Rosary is of more human origin than divine origin, that we just kind of made it up. No. One of the greatest popes ever, Pope Leo XIII, said that the Rosary is of more divine origin than human origin. It was made by God. He crafted it. He forged it together. And at a specific moment in time, he unsheathed it and gave it to his woman so that she could then give it to her chosen servants. So it starts with the angelic salutation. When the Archangel Gabriel comes to Our Lady and says, "Hail, full of grace." And then the other component, St. Elizabeth's greeting to Our Lady, "Filled with the Holy Spirit. Blessed are you among all women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb." And then we get the beautiful prayer from the lips of our Lord himself, the Our Father. What better prayer, could there be? And it slowly grows, and they don't come together till centuries. The Hail Mary prayer wasn't developed until the 6th and 7th century of the church, and a prayer in the liturgy. People were already praying the Our Father prayer, but the Hail Mary, it took time. It's an ancient rosary, the Seven Sorrows of Our Lady rosary. It was founded in the 13th century, right after Our Lady gave St. Dominic the original one. Well, the Servites said, we need to recover that. St. Bridget of Sweden was given visions. She was given a form of a rosary. And the Franciscans in the year 1422, this is Franciscan history here, was given to a novice named James, who was kind of bummed out because in the novitiate, he was not able to make wreaths to crown Our Lady with roses. And he felt disappointed that he wasn't able to do that. So Our Lady came to him, and she gave him a Franciscan form of a rosary, the Franciscan corona, the Franciscan crown rosary. And she specifically let him know that it was to be an understanding of crowning her with roses. And then it kicked in that all forms of Marian Psalters, whether they were the Dominican, Servite, Bridgetine, Franciscan, would be known as rosaries. That's when it got the name. So although it was originally given to St. Dominic, the church is perpetually grateful to the Franciscans for that vision given to that novice in the year 1422. Tried to get rid of it, but they didn't do that at all. They actually made it flourish. Because what happened? That was the century of the missionaries, the Jesuits. They went to India, and they went to the Far East and Asia, and the Dominicans and the Franciscans went to Central America, South America. And when they went across the high seas on those boats, did they bring big bulky tomes with them? No. Did they take huge liturgical items with them? No. They took the Bible on a set of beads, and they evangelized the world, and it worked. This is the essence of it all, and they knew it. And beginning with the founding of this, I forgot to mention this, they saw this as a weapon to conquer the falsehoods. And to me, it's interesting that they wear it on their left. Most religious wear the rosary on their left if they have a habit. Do you know why that is? Because it comes out of the time of chivalry, when knights would unsheathe their sword. Most people are right-handed, not all, but most. You unsheathe it from your left. That's why it's worn on the left side for almost all of religious who wear a rosary as part of their habit. When the Dominicans went to Mexico in 1525, do you know what happened 6 years later? Guadalupe. Europe was ditching the faith. Millions were leaving the one true faith. This did not make heaven happy. A gap had been created. And God basically said to Europe, you don't want it? Fine. I'll send my mother to a little nobody, Juan Diego, and within 10 years, he'll raise up 8 million to fill in the gap through this image, this Marian selfie that's given to the world. I really wish I could say I was the originator of that. Scott Hahn told me that. It was awesome. It's true. Selfie. And she just left it there. So, transformed, conquered the false gods of the Aztecs and their human sacrifices. And did you know that 4 copies were made of the original and touched to it and sent back to Europe? One was given to the King of Spain, who a little later in the century would give it to a man named John Doria, who would be on a key battleship in the Bay of Greece called Lepanto. The Conquistadora came to the Americas and conquered the false gods of the Aztecs. Now she was going to go back to Europe and conquer radical Islam. Oh, you don't mess with her. She has power, my friends. She has power. See, as all these missionaries were doing their great work and these saints were being raised up, there were warriors of the Rosary, champions of the Rosary. Satan, once again, struck back. He'd been striking back during that century in many ways through the Muslims. Specifically, even before that, in 1453, they conquered Constantinople and turned it into Istanbul and turned Hagia Sophia into a mosque, and they tried other strategic places to conquer. One that I found out, that I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, blew me away because almost nobody knows about it. In modern-day Montenegro, a city called Kotor, there was a young girl who had converted from Orthodox Christianity, become a Catholic, and became a third-order Dominican. And the Muslims were threatening to conquer that place because it was kind of a gateway to the rest of that area, the Adriatic coast and so forth. And she told the people, she ran through the streets saying to them, "Pray the Rosary, pray the Rosary." And they did. And they never conquered it. Blessed Ozana of Kotor. Look her up. She's real. She exists. Amazing. And before Lepanto, you have the Great Siege of Malta. How many of you know about the Great Siege of Malta? My friends, this was a phenomenal battle. Before Lepanto, everybody knows Lepanto, but before Lepanto, they were going to conquer Malta, the Muslims, because that was a gateway to Rome, because that's been their desire really from the beginning, to conquer Rome. All you got to do is listen to them. We try to be so PC today when they're telling us this. They wanted Malta. They had 40,000 that were going to attack it. What was the Catholic militia? Like 6,000. 6,000 to 40,000? The leader of the Catholic militia, Jean Parasot, you know what he did? I love this. He went to a blacksmith and he said, "I want you to make me a sword for when this battle goes down." And he said, "On the blade, I want you to put into it a rosary." And he did. And they slaughtered them. They never conquered that island. And you know that sword is still in existence today in the city of Burgoo on the island of Malta. There's a Catholic church there with a museum next to it. It still has that sword. You believe that stuff? That's unbelievable. And then we have Lepanto. Oh my, Lepanto. Here, I want to read you something. How many of you read Don Quixote or know about Don Quixote, right? Okay, written by Miguel Cervantes, right? Did you know that he was at the Battle of Lepanto? He took some serious hits there. He was seriously wounded for the rest of his life. And after the battle, he said this, "Ages gone by have seen nothing like unto the battle of Lepanto, nor has our age witnessed anything to compare with it. And in all probability, ages to come will never record a more beautiful or glorious triumph for the church." Why? Because basically, the reason that you're not reading a Quran right now and that you're not bowing down to Allah is because of that battle. It saved Western civilization from Islamic takeover. All historians know this, but today you don't read about it in the books. It was a serious moment, and the Pope didn't wait for them to come to St. Peter's and come knocking. He went and formed a militia, an army, a holy league. But the sad reality is that many people didn't respond. Why? Because he called upon England. England, come fight for Christianity. Not interested. Matter of fact, we're already right now pretty preoccupied, ransacking your monasteries, murdering your priests. They didn't come. Germany, not interested. They were doing the same thing practically, getting tons of people to leave the church. Spain came, in Venice, which was like its own kingdom at that time, and some others, but not many. So the Pope, a Dominican Pope, St. Pope Pius V, sent this militia out and blessed them, and he went to prayer at Santa Maria sopra Minerva in Rome. And he asked the confraternities and all of Christendom to pray this for the battle that was about to take place. He knew what was going on. He knew. And they won. Everything was against them. Many of them were unskilled in naval ability. Many of them were farmers that were willing to go fight for their God and for Christianity. Many of them did die, but they came up against everything. The Muslim fleet was huge, massive, and they were skilled, but they destroyed them. The fog and the wind turned in their favor. God was with them. And before the courier could come back to tell the Pope, he had a vision. He was in like meetings, and all of a sudden he went into like ecstasy. And he said, victory, a great victory has been given to us this day. And then later on, the courier arrived and said that his naval fleet had won and conquered the Muslims. And that's where we get the Feast of Our Lady of Victory. This thing, my friends, is so powerful in the sight of heaven that there's a battle going on around it. Many of you probably wonder in your own life why you struggle praying it so many times. I'm not going to blame it all on Satan, but there's definitely a battle going on for this, because this thing has power. Miracles were happening through this. You won't remember this, I'm sure, but in 1978, there was a serial killer named Ted Bundy who went on a rampage in Florida at the University in Tallahassee. And he massacred 2 girls in a sorority house, and he went into another girl's room to kill her. He had the weapon, the blood from the other girls on his hand, on the knife. He barged into the room, and all of a sudden a mysterious force repelled him from the room, and the weapon was thrown out of his hand. Why? Well, the girl in that dorm that night had fallen asleep with a rosary in her hand. Before she went off to college, she said to her mother that I promised to pray the rosary every night before I go to bed for protection. Well, that night, as often happens, if you try and leave it to the end of the day, you're going to fall asleep. She fell asleep. When the cops came, they saw the girl in a basically catatonic state. She was like paralyzed with fear. She said she didn't want to talk to anybody but a priest. They got a priest, a Monsignor came, and she told the priest that what she had told her mother about making that promise. Years later, when Ted Bundy was on death row, he asked to speak to a priest. Guess which priest came? The same one. And they had a little conversation. And Ted Bundy said to him, you know, there's something I don't understand. That last night, that was the last killing that he did, I had killed those 2 girls, and I went into the other room, and some force threw me out of the room and threw the weapon out of my hand. Can you explain that to me? Actually, I can. That's what the priest said. He said, I talked to that girl that night. She had made a promise to pray the rosary, and she had it in her hands. You weren't aware of it, but there was a power in those beads that threw you out of the room. This thing, my friends, has power. Saints of old would simply lay it on people who were possessed, and demons would shriek out of them. You know, today we look at this and we say, oh, that's just nonsense. No, it's not nonsense. This thing is a sword, my friends, a sword. So this is what we need today to conquer whatever addictions we're suffering from, whatever ailments that we're struggling with. We've all got them in one way or another, whether it's, suffering from gambling or lust or whatever it may be. We need this today to conquer this beast, to slay this dragon. But I think you'd have to be living on another planet not to know that the world has reached a climax on some level, and we need a Guadalupe event. We need the sun to spin, to shake us up, to wake us up, because we're not listening. We're not listening. How many of you are doing the first 5 Saturdays of reparation? How many of you even know what they are? Heaven has asked us for these things. We need to be doing it. We need to be doing it. I need to be doing it. The clergy needs to be doing it from the top down. Are you called to be a champion? I think you are.